Trump thought he was about to dominate Stephen Colbert on live television. But after one reckless insult, Colbert calmly reached under the desk, revealed a shocking report, froze Trump mid-sentence, flipped the audience in real time, and turned the studio into a silent courtroom where Trump's power collapsed on camera. Trump entered Stephen Colbert's stage like a man stepping onto his own property. He waved big, smiled wide, then leaned toward the crowd and said, "Relax, everybody. I'm here to save the show's ratings tonight." The laugh that followed was loud but thin, more nervous than amused. He sat down fast, cutting off Colbert's welcome line halfway through, and added, "Let's skip the fake polite stuff. You invited me because controversy sells, and I deliver." That wasn't banter. That was a warning. He crossed one leg over the other, stretched his arms along the chair, and stared at Colbert like he expected submission. In Trump's mind, this wasn't a conversation. It was a takeover. The stage lights weren't just lights to him. They were spotlights of power, and he believed they belonged to him the second he sat down. Colbert didn't flinch. He didn't interrupt. He didn't raise his voice. He just looked at Trump and said calmly, "You seem very comfortable here for someone who claimed he was ambushed by the show last time." The audience reacted instantly with a ripple of oohs and scattered claps. Trump smirked and fired back. "Ambushed, please. You throw jokes. I throw results. Big difference." He pointed toward the crowd like they were a jury already on his side. "They don't tune in to watch you lecture. They tune in to watch me win." A few cheers broke out, but they were uneven, clashing with pockets of silence. Trump pretended not to notice. He leaned forward and added, "You comedians love to act brave when there's a script and applause signs telling people when to clap." That line drew sharper reactions, half laughter, half discomfort. Colbert's eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger, but in focus. Trump kept pressing. "Let's be honest," he said, tapping the desk. "This show only pretends to challenge power. When real power sits in this chair, you freeze up," the crowd murmured. Some laughed nervously. Others shifted in their seats. Trump took that as fuel. "You see, even now, you don't know what to say," he added louder, trying to force the moment. He was baiting Colbert, trying to pull him into a shouting match where volume could replace facts. That was Trump's favorite terrain. Loud wins, aggressive wins, silence loses. But Colbert didn't give him that battlefield. He stayed still and replied, "I'm not frozen. I'm letting you talk. You seem very eager to prove something tonight." That line landed harder than Trump expected. The crowd reacted with sharper applause, and for the first time, Trump's smile tightened. Trump tried to reclaim momentum immediately. "Prove something." "I already did. You just talk about it on monologue nights," he snapped. He laughed loudly at his own line, waiting for the room to follow. The response came late, slower, some claps, some silence. Trump noticed it. He adjusted in his seat, straightened his jacket, and raised his voice again. "Don't worry, Stephen. I'll carry this segment for you." It sounded confident, but the edge in his tone betrayed irritation. Colbert didn't rush to answer. He let the pause stretch just long enough to make people lean forward. That pause did something Trump didn't expect. It made the room quiet. And quiet rooms are dangerous when someone is trying to perform dominance. Trump filled the silence with another jab. "You people love pretending this is serious journalism," he said, gesturing at the desk. "But it's comedy cosplay." The audience reacted again, louder this time, not with cheers, but with mixed sounds. Scattered boos, awkward laughs, confused murmurs. Trump felt it shift. He tried to cover it fast. "Relax, I'm joking," he added quickly, even though his tone didn't match the words. Colbert finally leaned forward slightly and said, "You joke a lot when you're uncomfortable." That line cut through the noise. Applause broke out stronger this time. Trump blinked once fast, then forced a grin back onto his face. Colbert shifted in his chair slightly, not to challenge Trump, but to slow the entire room down. His voice dropped a notch, calm and steady, the opposite of Trump's sharp energy. Before we move on, he said casually, "There's something small I want to clear up." The word small was deliberate. It sounded harmless, almost boring. The crowd relaxed a little, expecting a routine transition. Trump leaned back, rolling his shoulders, already preparing another joke. "Here we go," he muttered into the mic, smirking. "Let me guess. Another fake headline." A few people laughed. Colbert didn't react. He just nodded once and said, "Not a headline, a question." That pause right after the word question created a strange stillness that didn't belong in a late-night show. Colbert looked directly at Trump and asked, "Do you still stand by what you said last month that the Dina controversy was manufactured noise?" The room shifted immediately. Chairs creaked. A few people whispered to each other. Trump waved his hand dismissively. "Of course, total nonsense. Internet drama. You know how that goes," he replied quickly. Too quickly. He laughed, expecting the crowd to follow. The reaction was softer this time. Colbert didn't argue. He didn't accuse. He simply followed up with another calm line. Interesting, because when people hear manufactured, they assume there was nothing real behind it. Trump shrugged. Exactly nothing real. He tapped the armrest confidently like he was closing the topic himself. But Colbert wasn't finished. He tilted his head slightly and said, "Then why did your legal team send 3 separate statements asking networks to stop discussing it?" That question landed differently. It didn't explode. It sank. The crowd didn't cheer. They leaned in. Trump's smile froze for a half-second before he recovered. "Lawyers send letters about everything." He snapped. "That's their job." His voice was louder now, sharper. Colbert nodded slowly, like a teacher acknowledging a student's answer without confirming it was correct. "So it mattered enough to respond," he said quietly. That line created another ripple through the audience. People exchanged looks. Something felt off. This wasn't banter anymore. It felt procedural, controlled. Trump sensed it too. He tried to push back fast. "You're fishing," he said, pointing at Colbert. "This is what you do. You pretend to be calm while pushing fake narratives." The crowd reacted with mixed noise again. Some claps, some uncomfortable murmurs. Colbert didn't defend himself. He didn't deny it. He simply said, "I'm not pushing anything. I'm asking what you already answered in writing." Trump shifted in his seat. He crossed and uncrossed his legs, then leaned forward slightly. "You're trying to make this serious." "It's not," he insisted. "People don't care about paperwork. They care about results." Colbert let the words hang in the air. Then he said, "People care when paperwork decides truth." That sentence didn't come with humor. No punchline, no smile. The room went quieter than before. Even the camera crew seemed still. Trump laughed again, louder, forcing energy back into the space. "Wow, heavy stuff for a comedy show," he said sarcastically. But this time, the laugh didn't save him. The audience wasn't laughing with him anymore. They were listening. Colbert reached down slowly and picked up a thin folder from beneath the desk. The movement so calm, it almost looked casual. But the moment the folder appeared, the energy in the room changed. Cameras tightened their focus. The audience leaned forward without realizing it. Trump noticed, too. His eyes flicked to the folder and back to Colbert's face. "What's that? A prop?" Trump joked, forcing a laugh. "You running out of punchlines already?" Colbert didn't smile. He placed the folder on the desk and rested one hand on top of it. "This isn't a joke," he said quietly. "This is a Dina report." The word Dina hit the room like a sudden drop in temperature. The chatter stopped. Even Trump's grin softened for a split second before snapping back into place. Colbert opened the folder just enough to show the first page to the camera. "Let's start with the source." He said this sample wasn't taken in secret. It was collected through a legally documented medical record tied to a routine pediatric screening. The crowd reacted with low murmurs. Trump leaned back sharply. "Here we go," he muttered. "Another fake story built on rumors," Colbert continued without acknowledging him. The second sample came from archived biological material already on file with a private lab that handles high-profile cases. Both samples were anonymized before testing. He paused and looked directly at Trump. No names, no politics, just numbers and genetic markers. That pause hurt more than shouting would have. Trump opened his mouth, then closed it, clearly deciding whether to interrupt. Colbert flipped to the next page. Now the verification, he said. 3 independent labs processed the samples. Not 1, not 2, 3. The audience reacted louder this time. People whispered to each other. Someone in the front row shook their head in disbelief. Each lab followed the same chain of custody protocol. Colbert continued. Sealed transfer, time-stamped handling, digital verification at every clear-thumb stage. Trump scoffed loudly. You can get any lab to say anything if you pay them enough. Colbert nodded slightly. That's why the labs didn't know who the samples belonged to. They were blind tests. That answer landed hard. Trump's foot stopped bouncing. His jaw tightened. The cameras caught it. Colbert turned the page slowly, deliberately, dragging the moment out just enough to make it unbearable. Now, the conclusion, he said. His voice didn't rise. It didn't shake. It stayed flat and controlled. According to all 3 reports, the maternal genetic match does not align with Melania Trump. The room didn't react immediately. There was a half-second where no one seemed to breathe. Then the silence hit. Not awkward silence, not polite silence, absolute silence. No clapping, no gasps, just shock pressing down on the space like weight. Someone dropped a phone in the back row. The sound echoed far louder than it should have. Trump froze, not metaphorically, physically. His shoulders stiffened, his hands locked together on the armrest. The confident posture he walked in with collapsed into stillness. His eyes stayed fixed on the folder like it might disappear if he stared hard enough. For the first time that night, he didn't speak immediately. The audience noticed. The cameras noticed. Everyone noticed. The man who never stopped talking had nothing ready. Colbert didn't rush to fill the silence. He let it stretch. 5 seconds. 10. It felt longer. The weight of the moment grew heavier with every heartbeat. Finally, Trump swallowed and forced out a short laugh. That's ridiculous, he said. But the laugh didn't match the words. It sounded thin, weak. Even he seemed to hear it. Colbert looked up and said, "This isn't a rumor. It's a biological result." That sentence crushed whatever humor Trump was trying to build. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't boo. They stayed silent, absorbing it. Some people covered their mouths. Others stared straight ahead, eyes wide. The energy in the room had flipped from entertainment to disbelief. Trump shifted again, adjusting his jacket like he was trying to physically shake the moment off. "You expect people to believe this?" he snapped. "On a comedy show?" Colbert responded calmly. "I expect people to understand that Dina doesn't care where it's read out loud." That line triggered the first wave of reaction. Low gasps, a few sharp claps, whispers spreading row by row. Trump opened his mouth to speak again, but no sound came out for a second. He closed it, tightened his lips, then looked away from Colbert toward the audience, searching for support. But the room wasn't with him anymore. Trump broke the silence with laughter. Not the relaxed kind, not the natural kind. It came out loud and sharp, like he was trying to punch the moment away. "Wow," he said, clapping his hands once. "You really went all in on this soap opera." A few people in the crowd laughed out of reflex, but the sound was thin, scattered, unsure. Trump heard it and laughed again louder this time, stacking noise on top of tension. "This is what you do, Stephen," he added, pointing across the desk. "You dress gossip up like science and hope people don't notice." He smiled wide, showing teeth, performing confidence like armor. The goal wasn't humor. The goal was survival. Trump had always used jokes the same way he used hand gestures and volume. Not to entertain, but to control the rhythm. When things got uncomfortable, he sped the conversation up. When pressure rose, he turned seriousness into spectacle, so he kept talking. "Next, you'll tell me aliens signed this report," he joked. A couple of people chuckled late. Others stayed quiet. Trump leaned toward the audience, trying to pull them closer. "Come on," he said. "You don't actually believe this, do you?" The room hesitated. That hesitation mattered. Instead of laughter, Trump got murmurs. Some people shifted in their seats. Others avoided eye contact. He felt it slipping and pushed harder. "You see how serious he looks?" Trump said, mocking Colbert's calm expression. "That's acting. Hollywood stuff. Very dramatic." He exaggerated a serious face, drawing another wave of weak laughter. It didn't land the way he wanted. It sounded forced. The rhythm was wrong. Trump's smile tightened again. Then he tried a bigger joke, a riskier one. "Maybe I should bring my own DNOT test next time," he said with a shrug. "Or better yet, test Stephen. Let's see if he's really related to comedy." He laughed immediately, expecting the crowd to follow. They didn't. The room stayed quiet. Not awkward quiet, heavy quiet. The kind that makes a joke die in midair. Trump stopped laughing halfway through his own chuckle. His eyebrows lifted slightly in confusion. That was the moment. The first clear crack. The first time, his humor failed to carry him. Colbert didn't react. He didn't smirk. He didn't jump in. He just sat there, letting the silence expose the failed punchline. The audience felt it too. Some people looked down, others glanced at each other. A few shook their heads slightly. Trump cleared his throat. "Tough crowd," he muttered, trying to recover. He adjusted in his seat and leaned back again, trying to rebuild his dominant posture. "Look, this is entertainment," he said louder now. "You can't take everything so seriously." But the problem was already locked in. The crowd wasn't watching for entertainment anymore. They were watching for truth. Trump's laughter, once a weapon, now sounded hollow. Every joke felt like a shield raised too late. He kept throwing comments, hoping one would stick. "Stephen loves playing judge," he said, rolling his eyes. "But he's just a talk show host." A few claps came, scattered and delayed. Not enough, not convincing. At first, the shift was quiet, almost invisible. Trump kept talking, but the air around his words felt heavier, like they had to push through resistance just to be heard. Trump sensed it and tried to speed things up. "You're all overthinking this," he said, waving his hand dismissively. "People online invent stories every day. That doesn't make them true." He smiled again, forcing confidence. The crowd responded with scattered noise, but no unified reaction. That lack of synchronization mattered. When a room laughs together, power feels strong. When reactions break apart, power starts leaking away. Trump filled the silence with more words. He talked faster, joked louder, repeated phrases, hoping rhythm alone could pull the crowd back to him. Colbert stayed silent. He didn't raise his hands. He didn't speak. He didn't press the advantage. And that silence made Trump's voice sound louder and more exposed. Every sentence Trump spoke now landed alone, without the cushion of laughter. "You people act like this is a courtroom," Trump said, irritated. "It's not. It's television." But the irony was clear to the room. It felt like a courtroom now. People weren't entertained. They were judging. Trump noticed eyes on him that weren't smiling anymore. They were steady, focused, measuring. He leaned forward again. "Let's move on," he said firmly, trying to reset the segment. "This topic is boring." No one laughed. No one clapped. That moment hit harder than any insult. Trump blinked and glanced at the audience again, searching for familiar energy. He didn't find it. Instead, he found quiet. Not hostile, not aggressive, just heavy. The kind of quiet that makes someone aware of every word they say next. Trump reacted the only way he knew how. He got sharper. "You're all acting like I committed a crime," he said defensively. "I didn't." That sentence revealed more than he intended. Colbert raised an eyebrow slightly, but still didn't speak. The audience caught it. A few people shook their heads. Others whispered again. Trump crossed his arms, then uncrossed them, adjusting his posture like someone trying to regain balance. The room sat in that heavy quiet for a few seconds longer, long enough to make Trump uncomfortable. He tried to break it again. "You people really love drama," he said with a crooked smile. This is what happens when comedians play scientist. A few nervous laughs floated up and died quickly. Trump looked around, confused by how little support he was getting. Now he opened his mouth to throw another joke, but Colbert finally moved slowly, deliberately. He leaned forward just a few inches, resting his hands on the desk, not aggressive, not theatrical, just steady. His voice was calm, almost soft when he said it. "Mr. President, humor doesn't change facts." The sentence was short, plain, no punchline. For half a second, nobody reacted. Then the crowd exploded. Applause erupted from the center rows first, then spread outward like a wave. People stood up. Some whistled, others clapped over their heads. The energy flipped instantly, violently, like someone had thrown a switch. Trump froze again, blinking fast, his mouth slightly open. Clearly not expecting that reaction, he raised his hands trying to speak, but the applause drowned him out. Trump tried to recover. He waved his hand dismissively. "Oh, please," he shouted over the noise. "You're acting like you solved a crime." But his words were swallowed by clapping and cheers. The crowd wasn't listening anymore. They had already chosen a side. When the applause finally slowed, Trump leaned forward aggressively. "You think applause makes you right?" he snapped. Colbert looked at him calmly and replied, "No, evidence does." That second line didn't trigger the same explosion. But it didn't need to. The damage was already done. Trump leaned forward hard, gripping the edge of the desk like he could physically pull the room back toward him. "This is fake," he said sharply. Not joking now, not smiling. Completely fake. "You staged this." His voice rose, trying to climb over the applause that still echoed in people's ears. "You think bringing papers on TV makes you powerful? It doesn't. It makes you dishonest." The crowd didn't laugh, not even a little. A few people shook their heads. Others crossed their arms. The absence of reaction hit louder than boos ever could. Trump kept going anyway, mistaking volume for authority. He pointed at Colbert. "You're a second-rate host chasing attention." He snapped. "You couldn't get real ratings without dragging my name into it." In Trump's mind, this was a counterattack, a show of strength. But to the room, it sounded defensive, personal, thin. Colbert didn't interrupt. He didn't argue back. He just watched Trump unravel his own position, letting the audience see the contrast. That silence turned every one of Trump's words into evidence against him. Trump laughed again, but this time it was dry and hollow. "You all know this is nonsense," he said to the crowd, spreading his arms. "You're smarter than this." No one responded. No cheers, no claps, just quiet faces staring back at him. He blinked, clearly surprised. He tried again. "Come on, don't pretend you believe this garbage." Still nothing. That was the moment Trump lost something important. He lost the ability to pull energy from the room. Instead of slowing down, he sped up. He talked faster. He layered denial on top of denial. Fake lab, fake report, fake story, he repeated, stacking the word like it might magically become truth through repetition. But every repetition made it weaker. The more he said it, the less convincing it sounded. People in the audience exchanged looks. A few whispered again. One person quietly laughed, not at Colbert, but at Trump. That laugh wasn't supportive. It was uncomfortable, embarrassed. Trump misread the situation completely. He thought he was fighting back. In reality, he was bleeding credibility. He kept attacking Colbert instead of addressing the information. "You're obsessed with me," Trump said angrily. "That's the real story." But the room wasn't focused on Colbert anymore. They were focused on Trump's reaction, his tone, his desperation, his refusal to engage with facts. Every sentence pushed him further away from control. He stood slightly from his seat, half rising as if physical movement could reassert dominance. "This is a setup," he declared loudly. "Everyone knows it." The camera zoomed in on faces in the crowd. No nodding, no agreement, just steady eyes and crossed arms. Trump slowly sat back down, but the damage was done. The illusion of authority had cracked. Trump tried one last time. He spread his hands wide and said, "You're all letting a comedian tell you what to believe." His voice carried frustration now, not confidence. A few people shook their heads slowly. Someone in the back let out a soft sigh. That reaction, small and human, landed harder than any shout. It said more than applause ever could. Trump's shoulders tensed. He looked around again, searching for allies. He didn't find any. The room wasn't hostile. It was settled. That was worse. What the audience had done without realizing it was issue a public verdict. Not in words, in behavior. When a crowd stops reacting emotionally and starts responding with restraint, something final has happened. They weren't cheering Colbert anymore. They weren't even focused on Trump's insults. They were processing meaning, responsibility, credibility. And once a room enters that state, no performance can pull it back. Trump could shout, he could joke, he could accuse. None of it mattered. Now, the judgment had already formed. Colbert remained silent the entire time. He didn't add commentary. He didn't summarize. He didn't push the moment further. He simply sat there, hands resting calmly on the desk, watching the room respond on its own. That silence became the mic drop. The absence of reaction from him made the audience's reaction louder in a different way. It showed confidence without noise, control without aggression. Trump finally stopped talking, not because he wanted to, because there was nothing left to say that would move the room. He exhaled sharply and leaned back in his chair, staring straight ahead. His posture still tried to look dominant, but the tension in his jaw gave him away. He had lost the crowd, not through humiliation, not through attack, through contrast. The cameras captured the moment clearly. One man silent and composed. One man quiet because he had been emptied of influence. The room had chosen not with cheers, but with withdrawal. And that choice carried more weight than any chant. The stage no longer belonged to Trump. It didn't belong to Colbert either. It belonged to the truth that had settled in the space between them. The show wrapped without fireworks. No dramatic outro, no victory speech, just movement. Trump stood up slowly, straightened his jacket, and forced a tight smile toward the cameras like nothing had gone wrong. He gave a short wave to the crowd, expecting at least a polite response. It didn't come. Not boos, not cheers, just scattered claps and long stretches of silence. That silence followed him as he turned and walked off the stage. Each step felt heavier than the one before. Not because the floor was heavy, but because the room no longer responded to him. He had entered believing he would dominate the night. He left knowing the night had already moved past him. Colbert didn't celebrate. He didn't smirk. He didn't raise his hands or look toward the crowd for approval. He simply stood, nodded once toward Trump's retreating back, and then turned to the audience. His expression wasn't triumphant. It was calm, almost quiet. That calm said more than applause ever could. It showed restraint. It showed confidence that didn't need noise to prove itself. The cameras lingered on him for a moment, then pulled back, capturing the empty space Trump had left behind. What people would remember later wasn't the shouting. It wasn't the insults. It wasn't even the document itself. It was the contrast. One man tried to control the room by being louder. The other controlled it by being steadier. One tried to overpower the moment. The other let the moment reveal its own weight. That difference reshaped the entire night. It exposed something simple but uncomfortable. Power doesn't come from volume. It comes from credibility. It doesn't come from dominating the conversation. It comes from standing firm when the conversation gets uncomfortable. As the studio lights dimmed, the audience didn't rush to stand up. Many stayed seated, still processing what they had just seen. Some whispered quietly. Others sat in silence, staring at the stage like they were replaying the moment in their head. It wasn't entertainment anymore. It was reflection. That's when you know something real happened, when people stop reacting and start thinking. Trump's strategy had always been noise. Bigger voice, stronger presence, faster comebacks. But that night proved something he couldn't outtalk. Truth doesn't need a spotlight to survive. It doesn't need applause signs. It doesn't need to be shouted. When it's placed on the table and left there, it carries its own weight. And when a room recognizes that, control changes hands quietly. Cor packed up his notes, the audience, and walked off without looking back at the desk where the folder had been. He didn't need it anymore. The moment had already done its work. No celebration, no victory lap. Just a calm exit from a room that had witnessed something rare. A shift that didn't happen through force, but through clarity. He came to dominate the room. He left knowing the room no longer belonged to him. If this moment shocked you, don't look away. Subscribe now to catch the next confrontation, the next reveal, and the next truth that no one wants on camera. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens when power meets accountability. Because the real stories always start after the applause stops.